Hello, my name is Sheila Seppi, and I want to welcome you to my course, Walk-Ins, the Cosmology of the Soul. In September of 1999, I became a walk-in soul. And so this subject is very near and dear to me. And throughout this entire module and throughout this entire course, I'm going to share with you the truths that have come in with me when I incarnated into this body a little over 20 years ago. But before we get started, I want to let you know that first I'm going to share my story in detail with you, and that will be done in this particular module. What we're also going to discuss is our spiritual evolution from source, all the processes, all the way back to source. We're also going to talk about dropping our robe or the death process, and we're going to discuss our soul families and our soul groups. In module 2, we're going to talk about what is a walk-in? Exactly what is it? Is it a soul exchange? Is it an infusion? Is it a braid? All of these different terms we're going to discuss, and I'm going to share with you my knowledge of that. We're also going to talk about some of the changes that take place in the physical body, preparing for the walk-in to occur. There's neurological changes, there's changes in the energetic system, and when we're discussing the energetic system, we're also going to talk about how our energetic bodies become untethered from the physical body. So we're going to review what are the energy bodies and what are the chakras of our body. We're also then going to talk in module 3 about the different types of walk-ins, because walk-ins come from a plethora of locations, Earth and the stars. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to go in depth about our multidimensional selves and our cellular imprinting and how we bring in cellular memory with us. And we're going to talk about some of those patterns and how we can actually clear them. Now, in module 4, we're going to talk about the cosmology of the soul. We're going to talk about the different cosmic races. We're going to talk about the galactic families, and we're going to talk about the different soul classifications. In module 5, this is very exciting to me because we're going to talk about the universal cycles, and I'm going to share with you the universal structure that I remember. And we're going to talk about dimensions and talk about densities and the harmonic universe. And we're really going to go more in depth about the soul and what is the soul and how does the soul operate. So I'm so excited that you're here with me. And I'd like to go ahead and get started now with what I call anatomy of the soul. Now, there I am. That's a current photo from this year. But I want to start here in sharing my story with you, because in my life, in my early 20s, I had been diagnosed with the potential of brain tumors. Now, the reason that this came about is all of a sudden I started having these very weird sensations. When I touch my face, there's like this whoosh, the sensation that goes with it. And so I went to see an ear, nose, and throat specialist. They ended up sending me to the neurological center, and there I was diagnosed with the potential of brain tumors, MS, or AIDS. And they said, AIDS is something that's new on the horizon. We're just learning about it, but we don't know a lot, but you could have that too. And then when they talked about MS, they said, we're pretty sure you've got the beginning stages of MS. So you might as well prepare yourself that in your late 30s, you're going to end up in a wheelchair. So I heard what they had to say, but it really didn't resonate with me. And so I just went about my life as if I had not even had that conversation with them. But then in my 30s, I was walking down my stairs. I put my hand on the stair rail and my clavicle bone just totally shattered. Obviously, I went to the doctor. They ended up sending me to Duke University. I met with an oncologist there who told me that I had bone cancer and they were going to remove my clavicle. They were going to rebuild it with hip bone, and that I would probably be in physical therapy for about 6 months, learning to rewalk. And throughout my 30s and even into my early 40s, I had fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, migraine, sarcoidosis, erythema nodosum, and I did walk with a cane. Now, actually, it wasn't in my 40s, it was in my late 30s, because on the night of September the 22nd, I went to bed. I was a very sick person. I can remember I'd had migraines and I'd been on the couch all day. And, I really played with my 3-year-old son from the couch most of the time. But I went to bed very sick person, and I was very rooted in my belief systems. I knew exactly what I thought, and I knew how I believed. And I really didn't have a lot of room for anything else. I had no metaphysical background. I had no spiritual knowledge. I just believed in what the church told me to believe in. And I find that that was a very limited belief system, but that's exactly where I was. And I also had a very dysfunctional personality as well as marriage. But the next morning, I remember I sat bolt right up in bed. It was as if lightning was running through my body. And as I started to come to myself, I was in white space, and this was a sparkly, beautiful space. I was very comfortable. I felt relaxed. I felt very safe and nurtured, and I had no pain, absolutely no pain, which was wonderful. But as I began to, as I say, come back to myself, my periphery vision came in first, and then my frontal vision. And as I sat there in the bed and I was looking around, everything was the same, but everything was different. I felt so different. At the time, I had no clue that I was a walk in, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. But as I sat there in the bed, it was as if I could look at a photograph on the wall and all of the information would come to me. I could look at clothes in a laundry basket and where they were worn last, and the conversations that took place was all flooding my mind. I finally got out of the bed. I was walking around. I caught my image in the mirror, and I was dumbfounded because it was as if it was me, but there was like a stranger looking back at me. I had no idea what was going on. And as the day went on, things got even stranger. The first thing that I began to notice is that I knew things. I could look at a calendar and I knew what was going to happen that day, and nothing was written on the calendar. I could walk into my kids' room and I would see something that was about to happen to them. And I had no knowledge of this. Now, you have to remember, I had zero foundation for this. And so I really started to get concerned. Then I had clairsentient. I began to pick up on all of the feelings and all of the emotions that were associated with the items that I was holding in my hand, because I would just pick up an item and just look at it for what seemed like to be an hour. I would just look at it and turn it over and see how the sun kind of hit it and the reflections that was bouncing off of it. Then I became clairaudient. I began to hear things. And to me, that meant that I was having a psychotic break. Now, my background, I had enough psychology just to be dangerous. So I thought, this is it. I've lost it. The illnesses, the stress, everything has finally gotten to me, because I would hear voices and I would even turn around and I would look, and there was no one there. Now, yes, I would hear my name being called, but I would also hear messages like, you have to leave now, get, you have to do this, move here, pick this up. I was hearing all kinds of messages. And for me, I didn't know what it was about. And then all of a sudden, I had this gift of discernment. Now, to me, discernment also brought with it the ability to look at people and to know when they were telling me the truth. I could look at someone and I would just know things about them. I had no idea what was going on with me. The other thing that was really strange is I had all this new knowledge, all this new information just flooding into my mind and into my thoughts, things that I had never read about. I remembered healing techniques that I had never studied. I started remembering past lives that I did not even believe in the night before when I went to bed. The other thing that really was strange and that honestly concerned me the most is lack of old memories. I did not remember my children's childhood. I did not remember my childhood. I did not remember a lot of people that supposedly I was good friends with. I didn't remember people from high school. And it was so concerning that down the road, my mom ended up sitting me down and having a talk with me because she was concerned that I had the early onset of Alzheimer's. That's how severe my memory loss was. And it was so wonderful because when I finally told her I was a walk-in, she said, "Oh, my goodness, that finally makes sense to me." So that was good to be able to share that with her. And as I mentioned, I started having past life memories. I could just be someplace and remember being in that same place in a different lifetime. I would meet people and I would have flashes of lives that we had shared together. Again, I didn't even believe in this. And then these universal truths, all of these various laws of the universe started flooding into my mind. Now, after about 6 months, I moved from, well, actually, within 3 months, I had left the marriage. Within another 3 months, I had moved to an adjoining state and taken a new job. And while I was there, I found a telephone directory. So, well, I'm getting ready to move my family there. So I just started flipping through, trying to see what types of services were there in the area. And I came across an ad in the back of the phone directory, and it was for spiritual counseling. Well, as I said, I had a background in psychology, so the counseling was just right up my alley. And then the spiritual, I really felt that I needed that because honestly, I was starting to have a crisis of faith. And what I found in that meeting from this psychologist, this licensed psychologist that I went to in hopes that she could write a prescription, I could take a medication and everything would just disappear. That was my reality then. But she told me that I was a soul exchange, that I was a walk in, and I am one that had total recall of that event. And no matter how many times I tell the story, it is exactly the same every single time. And the more I talked with my teacher, the more I learned about her as well. And she was of the Hopi lineage, and she herself was a walk in. She gave me a book, sent me on my way, and I can remember mumbling to myself as I left her, that first appointment. And I got down to the car, and even before I pulled out, I was so excited to have that second meeting because it just felt right. For the first time in 6 months, I believed that I was starting to get some answers and really starting to know who I was. But it took a long time for me to be able to even wrap my brain around the concept of a walk-in because it was so foreign to me. Now, when I came in as part of a multi-dimensional collective, and we're going to go more in depth in that in the other modules, but I still stay connected with my collective. And we came to the earth around the late 80s, and we were far out into the universe, and we felt this resonance, this call from Gaia, and we came and enshrouded the planet, and we were working within the planetary grid system and the crystalline grid, and we were trying to upload information that would help humanity to wake up, and we were beaming unconditional love and support in hopes of assisting Gaia. And when the cry went out from my soul to be released, it was decided by my collective that I would be the one that would come in. This aspect would come in to the body. And in module 5, I go into a lot more detail about the collective. Now, one of the things, as I mentioned, is I had little to no memory of my previous life. Even to this day, I don't have very good memory. I don't have recall. Now, if someone will show me a photograph, if they will discuss with me what was going on, kind of the backstory to the photo, it's kind of like I can remember. It's like seeing an old movie and I'm just sort of pulling bits and pieces out. And it's like, oh yeah, I kind of remember that, but not really. But when I came in with a mission to be a way shower and to assist others in their spiritual evolution. And that is exactly what I was doing when I was part of the collective. Now, the other thing that I mentioned already is I did within 3 months, I left the marriage. And previously, I didn't have the strength to. I can remember that there were times that I think that I had thought about it. But again, I was a very weak and sick person. And I left January the 1st of 2000. When I came in September, all those 3 months trying to acclimate, who am I? What's going on? I can't believe these things that are happening to me, thinking that I was going crazy. I did try to share this experience with my husband, and he just looked at me like I was crazy because I could say, oh, that song. I remember those tones and da, 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 da. And I would just be sharing these stories, and he was looking at me with his mouth open. So I learned pretty quickly that I could not share this experience with him. And I also learned that I didn't have enough connection with this man to remain married to him. And so within those first 3 months, then I did decide that I was going to go ahead and leave the marriage, because finally I had the strength to be able to do so. So these are some of the things that really have happened to me on my path that has brought me to where I am now. As I said, within another 3 months, I had accepted a job and I moved to another state and I found my first spiritual teacher. And honestly, that's where my true journey began, because in working with my spiritual teacher, she held what's called women's circles. And she was of the Hopi lineage, as I mentioned. So she had been charged with carrying on the teachings of the women in the traditional circle way. And so we met on a regular basis. I was in absolutely every circle that she offered. And I was like a sponge. I was just pulling in all of this information. And the reality of it is, the shamanic walk is what helped me to integrate. And my teacher really saved my life because I was having crazy thoughts, in addition to being over, stimulated with all these new ideas, all these new memories, all of these gifts and talents that I had no idea how to use them. I found that by working with my spiritual teacher, learning how to shamanically travel, that I could go to the upper world, I could go to the lower world, I could just kind of hang out, I could work with my guides, I could work with my spiritual teachers. Um, so after my integration process began, it was very clear to me that I needed to share with other people that I was a walk-in, even though I didn't fully understand it myself. But I am wanting to share all of this information with you because maybe you who are watching this may have had some of the same experiences or yet very different ones. And you might be wondering, hey, am I a walk in? This has happened, that has happened. All of a sudden, these gifts came in. What exactly is going on with me? So I want to go ahead and offer these stories and information with you in hopes that if you are a walk-in, that you will discover who you are and that you will be able to integrate fully. Because if you are here, you're here to help usher in this new time. You're here just like so many other people. We're all here to help hold space for this planet because each of us has a unique soul and each of us has a unique mission, but we're all here to grow, expand, and evolve because eventually we all return back to source. And people will call and talk to me. We'll have appointments set up. I do one-on-ones with people and they'll say, what is my life mission? I just don't feel like I have anything that I'm offering. But they're the same people that if you pass them on the street will be smiling. They'll have these huge smiles or they'll say a kind word. And to me, bringing that kind of energy, holding that energy, anchoring that energy onto this planet is as important as any other mission that anyone has. Now, what I have discovered for myself in working with my guides is I was trying to find some clarity on why is it that I was sitting bolt right up in bed. I don't understand what was going on. And my guides very plainly told me that the soul enters into the physical body through the top of the head. And when that happened for me, I propelled that old soul out, the natal soul, because it did not have enough strength on its own to be able to leave. And so when that came in, I sat bolt right up in bed. Now, typically, I have been taught and remember that the soul will enter into the body and exit the body many times while the baby's in utero and also right after the birth. Not only are they checking it out, but they're also helping to upgrade the hard and software of the infant so that when they come in and they lock in fully, that they don't fry the system. They also are imprinting information that is going to be needed. But when the baby is born, when that first breath is taken, that silver cord attaches to the physical body. The soul can still leave, come in and out, but they are attached to that body. And typically the soul will remain until that last and final breath occurs. But that isn't death. There is no death. I remember slipping out of the body, and we're going to talk about that here in just a few minutes. And it is a beautiful process. And one of the most important things that I want us to remember through all of these modules is that we're all part of Source, God, Great Spirit, Creator, however you feel comfortable naming this energy. And we are all connected because we are all just one. Now, I want to share with you a little bit of information about Source Energy, God, and Great Spirit, because when I first came in, I was so confused about so many things, and my guides were such wonderful teachers for me. And finally, one day, I was talking to them, and I'm like, okay, now I understand that I'm a walk-in, but I don't understand the process. And they gave me a teaching that I have been sharing with my students over the last 10 to 15 years. And that is, we are all part of Source. We begin with Source. And there are several things that will occur until the Sheantiaskaan, but I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in Module 5. But the word, the Sheantiaskaan, came to me. And I'm like, what is that? And I was told that that is the container for our souls. It actually is our larger soul, or some people refer to it as an oversoul. But this is the container that holds all of our thoughts, all of our memories, all of our actions, all of our deeds, everything that has ever occurred throughout all of our lifetimes. It's stored. It's kind of like our own cloud storage, if you will, where we upload all of this information. Now, when we decide that we're going to incarnate from the Sheantiaskaan, we come down. If you'll look at the photo, you'll see the sun is representing spirit. And then there's a swirl of, to me, it was light and sound and frequency. And that's the Sheantiaskaan. And when we decide that we're going to incarnate, our souls are so big, we can only bring in just a tiny little piece of that. And this line that you see coming down into the human form, that's to represent the higher self. And that's the part that is attached to us, but it also is attached to our Sheantiaskaan, so we can continue to be fed and receive information. Now, all of the shape that you see around this person, yes, you could say is the aura, but it also is the spirit, because the spirit enlivens. It is the action part of our soul. It is the container and what holds all of our energetic systems, and it kind of flows through us at all times. But that part of the spirit that attaches to us is called the soul. Now, within the Sheantiaskaan, we have a certain vibrational resonance. And when we resonate with other Sheantiaskaan, then we all kind of come together, sort of like magnets. We're drawn together. And this is what our soul family is all about. And then our families have their own frequency, and they resonate, and they attract other families, and that's called our soul group. And we can have many soul families and many soul groups within the Sheantiaskaan connection. So if you look at all the little dots, it's kind of like all of those represent the little individual Sheantiaskaan. Now, dropping the robe is what we call the death process. And I want everyone to know that there should be no fear in dropping of the robe. I remember slipping out of the body, whether it was coming in and out of this body, whether it was in past lives, but I very plainly remember the release coming up and out of the body. And it was like, oh, I'm free. I'm free again. Because being inside the body is very confining because we're huge. We're part of that Sheantiaskaan, but only a small part comes into us. And if there is tragedy, if an automobile accident, if there's suffering, please rest assured that the spirit, the soul is already leaving that body. And we, the souls, the spirits, do not feel any of that pain. So just like the other graph that I showed you, we have the soul. Now the soul will begin to unwind its information and it'll begin to feed, and that information will then begin to retract up into the spirit. Now, while all of this is occurring, the spirit is undergoing a soul review. The soul review is when you will meet back with your guides, your teachers, your planning team that you had when you came and developed the birth plan, which we also will be talking about in another module. But during this birth plan, you set certain goals for yourself. And so it's during this time that the spirit will undergo this soul review. Now, the other thing that will happen is if someone had a very, very traumatic lifetime, when the spirit, right before it undergoes this soul review, will go for healing, and it will have like a light sound frequency bath, if you will, and it will then work to heal itself and then to move forward. Now, all of the information then from the soul retracts into the spirit, which retracts into the higher self, which then moves back up into the Sheantiaskaan, which then that vibrational frequency moves back into source. We are never disconnected from source. We are part of source. And if you will think of, let's say, source as the ocean, then if you take a pitcher and you dip it into the water, that pitcher represents the Sheantiaskaan, and the water inside represents your energy, all of the collection of you. As you begin to pour that water into a container, the water that's coming in represents the higher self. The action of pouring that water represents the spirit, and what is in the cup actually then represents the soul. Now, the soul, spirit, and higher self, as they reabsorb into the Sheantiaskaan, they will become one again. And so when that birth process for the next incarnation occurs, to me, I see everything as just kind of like this swirl of energy. And then a little bit of us then begins to incarnate back down. I've already mentioned that if needed, that we will undergo a spiritual healing of light, sound, and frequency. Now, the Sheantiaskaan is always elevated by the new knowledge and experience that's brought to it. And some people have said, I really had a crappy life. I can't believe that what I've experienced is going to be of any benefit to my Sheantiaskaan. And it's like, but of course it will, because we are here to experience, to grow, to evolve. And we can't just have one experience. We have to have all different experiences. I loved this photograph, and I wanted to share it with you because to me, this really represents the severing of that silver cord through the dropping of the robe process. Now, all of this white swirl to me just represents that spiritual essence that we truly are. And I loved this photograph too because it shows this woman retracting back up into herself, and that reminded me of reuniting with her Sheantiaskaan. And this photograph I thought was really cool because it reminded me of Sheantiaskaan and our soul families and our soul groups. And so for me, when I received this teaching, it just made so much more sense because for the first time ever, I realized, well, no wonder I can remember past lives. I'm still connected to them. Okay. Now, a little bit later on, I believe it's in module 5, we'll even talk about how all time is occurring at one particular moment. But for me, back then, those were concepts that I could not even conceive of. And if someone shared them with me, even in the walk-in state, I would have had a difficult time conceiving. Now, when we come in as a soul, we all bring certain innate qualities with us, and we bring in knowledge from the other side. As we progress, this knowledge begins to unfold within itself, and we're able to handle new information. Sometimes I'll pick up a book and I'll read it. It really speaks to me, and I'll start to read it, and it's like, "Ugh, I'm so tired. I have to put it down." And I start to digest the information. Then I may or may not go back to the book. But given a little time, I can go back and pick that book up, and everything in that book will make so much more sense to me. So I want to thank you for participating in Module 1 with me. I hope you've learned about yourself. I hope that something that I have said has really sparked something, maybe woke something up within you. And for the next few minutes, what we're going to do is to participate in a meditation that's going to allow you to connect more fully in to your higher self. So again, thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you again back in module 2, 3, 4, and 5. Thank you and namaste.